Okay, welcome back. We're still on page 244 talking about classes in general. So there are some rules for building a class, so pay attention because you know I like rules. So the name of the class, in this case employee, should be in Pascal case, meaning the first letter is capitalized. If there's more than one letter, like, the example where we had non-exempt or something, the class would typically be a noun, person, place, or thing. And you should really describe what it is. I mean, don't have a class called Kumquat where you're doing payroll. No one's going to know what that means. If it's an employee, make an employee. And then, of course, most likely, the class is going to be public. Because there are very few scenarios where you want to build a class and then not use it. I mean, there are a couple of weird scenarios, but most likely, it's going to be public. So there's an example on page 245 where they have a class. They're obviously doing some sort of a game. A soldier. And they have two fields in there. A health field and a soldier type field. And then they have a method called shoot enemy, where your character is supposed to fire his weapon at the bad guys. Okay? So straightforward on page 245. So the member variables, which I call fields just because that's just me. So these are member variables right here. Member variables. These are the data that's being stored in the class. All right. And then there's methods. So methods are things where actions. So I'm going to skip over a bunch of this stuff and get down to here. So here's one that calculates their pay. And all we're doing is taking the number of hours times the rate, and that's it. There's no overtime. And here's another method called toString, which spits back all sorts of cool information about the employee. And here's one that spits out information that's relevant to their pay. Okay? Isn't that pretty cool? In fact, let's just go do that. I'm going to go back up to here where I have this pay equals thing. I'm going to say imp1 equals, and I'm going to say imp1 toString. All right, so this should spit out information about how the everything there is to know about the employee, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to do here too. So I'm going to say imp2 equals imp2 toString. All right, let's just run this, make sure it works. And there we go. I got imp1 is, employee ID, Bob Jones, engineering, and he got paid $400, and Sally Smith, admin, got paid $900. So everything worked the way expected. Now, do you see the difference between the nouns and the verbs? Nouns are where I put stuff in, maybe take stuff out. And then verbs are when I do something like tell me about the employee, or calculate their pay, or show me how their pay is calculated. Those are methods. So nouns, properties, attributes, they go through so many different fields, nouns, attributes, properties. They go by a gazillion names. But basically what we're talking about is this stuff in here. These are all nouns, properties, fields, attributes, whatever. Okay. And then, like, shoot enemy on page 245, or in our case, calculate pay. All right. So on page 246, they talk about how do you make an instance of a class. Well, you use the new keyword. And this is kind of strange because we don't really do this. Is the first time we've done this in the class so far, is to create a new instance using a new. Now, okay, there's some really goofy terms out there. I mean, goofy. Remember we talked about an object as an instance of a class? Well, somebody took instance and made a verb out of it, and they call it instantiate. I know, it's hard to say. It's even harder to spell. It probably won't go through spell check very often. So you could say that line 20 instantiated an employee. Okay? I've heard people say, I nude it up. Not nude as in not wearing clothes, but I've nude it up. I nude an employee there. Okay, that sounds almost as good as instantiate. Okay. So one more time. The reason why this shows up twice is one time this is being used as a type and one time this is being used as a constructor. The constructor is providing guidance and information on how to build one of those guys. Okay, good. Now, to get to the data inside one of these things, you use the dot operator. So I want to go here and I want to set the first name. So I'm using the instance, employee one dot, and then something that's going to allow me to set the first name or set the last name. By the way, they don't have to be set. Why don't I just turn right around and say, hey, what is your name? I mean, this is kind of dumb because we just told it, but bear with me. So I'm going to say string, junk is equal to imp1. Instead of set first name, how about get first name? Okay? So either way, it's a dot operator. So the dot operator allows you to get access to things. Okay? So in this case, set first name, set last name, set department, or it could be get first name, get department, get hours, get rate, whatever, right? Cool. All right. So when we came here to do the pay, it was just dot operator dot pay. To get the toString, it was a dot operator and the toString. Kind of sort of makes sense. Okay. So how can you tell what's a method and what's a field? First of all, we don't have any public fields in our class. Well, that's not exactly true. I do have a public field. It's the employee department type. Okay? So how can I tell if something is a method or a field? Well, methods always have parentheses. So set first name's got parentheses. Get first name has parentheses. But look at this guy. Is there any parentheses in here? Nope. Okay, so how do you tell the difference between a field and a method? Well, methods always have parentheses. Okay. So when it comes time to write a class, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, what we did is, let me do just one more. And it's just going to be a simple example. And I'm not going to have too much to it. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to create me a new class. And I'm kind of running out of things. I'm going to call mine student. So typically what you would have to do is you would have to have some way to store the data. So I would have to have something like the first name, okay? So for reasons that I won't describe just yet, I'm going to say private string first name. All right, so now I can store first name. Cool. But then also I'm going to need a way to retrieve that, okay? So I'm going to need a way to get the first name. So I'm going to create me a method. This is a special type of method called a getter. It's just a slang. It's not really special. It's just a method like any other method. It's just that it's fairly commonly done through these words called get and set. So I'm going to say get first name. Whoop. And so in order for this to work, I'm going to have it return a string. And then I'm going to go here and say return first name. Cool. And then I need to have something in here for allowing you to put the first name in. Because it's not good enough to just be able to take the first name out. I got to be able to put it in there. So public void put first name. And then it takes as an argument some sort of a name. And then instead of returning something, I'm going to put that thing in here. So I'm going to say first name is equal to name. Now, you might look at that and go, well, that's a hell of a lot of work for nothing. And we'll talk about that coming up in an upcoming chapter. But there's an opportunity here for you to do something different. There's an opportunity for you to check to make sure that the name is not blank. Okay? Which is kind of cool. It's part of input validation. So this will be an opportunity for you to do input validation, to make sure that every time you assigned a value to something, it would work. Let me give you a better example here. I'm going to go to my guy, and instead of hourly rate, this person only makes $2 an hour. Okay. And then I'm going to do I'm going to do another one here. I'm going to say double rate is equal to imp1 get rate. And then I'm going to have it display this out because I want to see it. So et display append rate equals rate. Okay, cool. Let's go run this and see what happens. I click on that, I click on that. And it says pay is equal to -1. What? What on earth? What happened? I'll tell you what, let's go to logcat. And let's go in here and tell it we want to find errors. And I want to have a particular one for employee. And it came back and said, pay rate must be between $8.45 and $100. Okay, so what happened is I've done some input validation. I've told the machine that you may not pay someone less than minimum wage. That is one of the magnificent features of using OOP, is that I get to make things bulletproof. So if I make my class bulletproof, I don't have to have any documentation on how it works. You know, if this thing was hidden from me and I never actually saw it, okay, like the way you would be on a normal job class that comes with Java, you don't have the source code. You could still figure out how it works by just, you know, asking for the dot operator, right? The dot operator is going to tell you lots of things. And then, like, for example, I'm not familiar with what employee is, so I just type imp1 dot and then boom. It gives me a list of all the things that I can get to. I can get to something called set first name and calc and pay parameters and all these other things. The things that are grayed out are the things that are associated with the big O object class, which we're not going to use. Okay, just saying. Okay, these are private field variables, and you can't. Okay, so one of the things they talk about in the book is can I pass as a parameter an instance of a class? Well, to tell you the truth, we've already done it. Let me give you an example. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to say public void, I don't know, do click, and then say view v. Okay, like this. Okay, view is a class, right? It's the top level super class for all of the widgets, and v is an instance of a class. So I just passed an instance of a class to a method. So yes, I can pass an employee guy down here, right? I could have something else in here called public void, I don't know, and pass an employee. And then when I get here, I can do something with an employee. Okay, that's about it for this chapter. This was a philosophical chapter, not too much into the weeds. So I'll see you guys again in the next chapter.